All right, hi there. Welcome back to the Drawing Database. Professor Marc Leone here, and today we're going to look at the drawings of South Africa's biggest name in the art world and probably the biggest name in the art world for drawing currently or at least across the globe, and that would be William Kentridge of South Africa. Born in Johannesburg, South Africa, 1955, so he's still with us, alive and well. I believe at about 66 years old, and producing quite a bit of drawing work and film work across the globe. He is an important artist dealing with his own country's tumultuous apartheid past. He makes primarily drawings, also films from drawings in sculpture and theater sets. The films, I think, are probably what elevated certainly his practice to international status. And he makes these films by doing drawings such as this one that are still, and then taking a photograph of them with a pretty old larger camera, and he'll make almost like animation, make a couple of changes and then step back and photograph it again. So it's a very labor intensive process, and then those images are spliced together and a very raw kind of crude film is made, and music is added to that. So these drawings are very narrative based or mythological or subjective based, and certainly in a sense, a personal exploration of the violent apartheid that has been a part of South African experience and has, again, gained international notoriety as they have come out of and grappled with racism and bigotry and the forces of those contexts, and William Kentridge deals with that constantly as a Caucasian man within certainly South Africa. So here we see again drawings that are probably 3 or 4 feet roughly, not too terribly big for his films, and they're in additive subtractive charcoal. I've read and seen interviews of him stating that the works are primarily started without a formal idea, and then they begin to show some kind of narrative structure as he processes them. So you can imagine the drawings are done primarily 1 or 2 sheets that he'll work on simultaneously, one across on the wall from the other, and they're shot constantly, made a few adjustments and then shot again. So the entire film is made from 1 or 2 sheets of paper. You can kind of see underdrawings in through these areas where images have been placed before. So again, additive subtractive charcoal, especially compressed charcoal, and also vine, is an incredibly rich source of malleability or changeability within drawing, and that's why I like to promote using charcoal in our studies at the university, because it's so malleable like clay. And I think this particular shot is from his film Felix in Exile, and chronicles a loss of a love and death, and a sense of grief within this character's journey in life. And we see the figure here, bed covered in drawings, walls covered in drawings, and I think it's probably loosely based on William Kentridge's life too as well. Didn't use much color, but we see a little bit of color included here in the blue. Here we see another excerpt from the film Felix in Exile, and we see the author, the narrator, confronting a lost love in the mirror, an imagination of what he's lost through apartheid and struggle of an interracial marriage. And then the film goes off into other narrative contexts, and it dips into this mirror and goes on to her existence and her demise, I believe. And again, notice the drawing style is relatively crude. It's rough, it's raw, but yet still figurative and also narrative based, and it has a beautiful sense of being the appropriate kind of formal aesthetic for the type of drawing or the type of context that these narratives, these loosely based narratives, need. If it was slicker, it would be too labor intensive, and it was too raw, it wouldn't be, or too abstract, it wouldn't be a narrative. So it falls within a nice range of what's needed for the type of art being made. And that's something that young students that we talk about here at the university is what kind of aesthetic are you developing in order to be best practice for the overall look and aesthetic and communication that you are wanting to work with. Another film still here, so that means that this drawing is one shot of probably several thousand or hundred at least that he did to make a motion picture film of 10 or 15 minutes, and it's an x-ray of damaged or areas of parts of the body. And then the film goes on to blow out into how this particular person's body came to be damaged by violence against this person through the forces of separation and apartheid. So we see here little parts of a human pelvis, a sacrum in through here, and certainly the spine, right, and then the expressive rib cage, all done in additive subtractive charcoal, and even this background was also part of that film. And you can see where he's got the little pins where his drawing is hung, and then if you can imagine doing part of a drawing and then stepping about 8 to 10 feet back and allow it to be photographed, and then you go forward and add a little part to the drawing and then step back and add it, it becomes your own animation. So it's a powerful medium in that he uses a very crude animation technique for very raw visual effect, not unlike Walt Disney, not unlike Pixar or other, Hanna-Barbera studios, etc., that use a more refined and a slicker version of animation. What's fascinating, again, to wrap around your mind that most of his works are done on very few pieces of paper, so the multitude of those drawings are done on 1 or 2, 3 or 4 surfaces, and not each individual page spliced together. So William Kentridge is also something of a sculptor, and these are kind of spliced together versions of 2 90-degree or perpendicularly placed pieces of large board paper that are spliced, something crudely kind of like that. And then there's a seam in the middle there. You can see that of a figurehead here, and again using newspaper typography, drawing in some red marks. That's also characteristic of Kentridge, to use a little bit of collage, to use books as a powerful voice and tool for his work as well. And these are probably about 6 feet tall in their largesse or their stature. But again, they're made from sculpture, made from drawing, and we can see, relatively 2 heads, one here, one right through here, and then so on. Here, a study of a reclining figure. Can't tell really if it's male or female, but it doesn't really matter. It harkens back to more of a kind of an academic study, although it's probably best placed within perhaps a film, but it could be on its own. You can see where it's been pinned down. But additive, subtractive, charcoal, more expressive kinds of marks, a less academic approach, a flatter approach. It reminds me a little bit of the English sculptor Henry Moore's work, a little bit in terms of its drawing quality, maybe Richard Demoncorn with its additive, subtractive charcoal, but certainly the cross contouring and hatching as well within the drawing, in the less logical volumetric feeling of a kind of logical finish to the forms, like this big sort of chalky charcoal area. Looks like the figure's been burned or it's been manipulated and almost bruised and battered. So the feeling is forlornness. The figure's turned away from us, and perhaps the figure had been tortured to some degree. This gives you some scale of the work as well. Not all of it. These are drawings that are done primarily for showing rather than for filming, and they're quite large. You can see the scale of this young lady in through here stepping away. So these are probably 8 feet maybe, and then together 16 feet across, I'm guessing, relatively. And these are typewriters which found a place in his work as means of kind of antiquated communication. So the rendering of the object as a metaphor, as a symbolic piece, is very, very much a modern kind of idea where we isolate one object and give the symbol a density to it rather than tell a story. And there could be an underlying story within that: who used the typewriter, where it came from, what was used to communicate on that, who typed on it, how many people typed on it, and why is it so old? Because now typewriters are obviously obsolete as we have personal computers. And so this all becomes a nostalgia, or a looking backwards, regression back to a particular time and place when perhaps, as I'm guessing, conjecturing, when apartheid was raging through the country of South Africa. And then lastly, another drawing in a gallery situation of multiple sheets of paper. You can see how they're stacked together to make an arch, almost like a frieze, if you will, or almost a half rotunda. And of course, you see the scale of the young woman here, probably about 5'4" maybe in feet and inches here, and it has a sense of more figuration, a little bit more refined for Kentridge. Let's see if we can go in a little bit further before it pixelates too bad. And a little bit more refined, but yet still the scale and proportion of the figures are chunky and thick, enlarged and shortened. He uses his kind of classic blue here a little bit with umbrellas and rain and construction, and there's a sort of metaphorical symbology through here with silhouetted figures as well. And that kind of reminds me a little bit of foreshadowing Kara Walker's work, female African American artist, somewhat within the use of drawing as a finishing product within the context of a fine art career, where drawing now has become a medium and a source unto itself rather than a preparatory medium, which certainly was the case in earlier art historical contexts like the Renaissance or Baroque or Neoclassicism and beyond. It really wasn't until the 20th century and later on in the 20th century that drawing became enough of itself to be a finishing medium. So there you have it. Giant of the art world, certainly William Kentridge of South Africa. Take care. Bye-bye.